Hi, Kat.
Hi, Britt.
I was so excited to talk to you.
And I'm so excited to talk to you, legit, because it feels like I'm like missing sort of the regular Motherland community who have just been so charming and kind. And so it's really nice to get to spend some time with you today.
Thank you. I feel like we all kind of feel that at this moment. Like everybody's off doing other things, and it's just very, we're just missing our little family of people.
Yeah,
So I'm so happy you're willing to do this and willing to talk to me about Motherland and everything that surrounds it. Um,
sure.
did you ever hear about the podcast before? Have you had any knowledge on it?
I have been overwhelmed by the love and conversations that have been generated. So I've heard about a number of different podcasts. I think
Uh-huh.
yours is unique because you do a lot of fan fiction, if I'm not
Yeah, that's
mistaken.
pretty much
Yeah,
what the podcast is. We read Motherland Fort Salem fan fiction to make it
fantastic.
more accessible to everybody, people who may be blind or can't read or for whatever reason. So we wanted to be accessible for everybody. So we decided to
Nice.
start the Fort Salem Library.
And hey, there'll be an online resource when they get season 4 together.
Exactly. Exactly. When they finally get it together.
And they finally get it together.
Yes, it'll be here. It'll be available. Exactly. Have you ever known that Petra was in fan fictions? Like, is that a thing that because you've been in a bunch of TV, so you must have known fan fiction existed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know that different characters that I've played have been sort of incorporated into other worlds,
Yeah.
which I think is awesome. Like I think that we inspire creativity in others to use us as raw materials for things that tell the stories they want to express and share with the world, I think is awesome. So I think it's
Absolutely.
really wonderful that people are exploring writing or exploring creating or
Mhm.
exploring their own creative expression using us as the jumping off point for that. So I think that's a
Absolutely.
testament to the wonderful world Eliot created, but
Oh,
also
yeah.
what it inspires in so many others. And it just is really, really gratifying and humbling to be a part of that.
Yeah. Petra is actually in 286 fan fictions, tagged in 286 as a character, standalone character. This is
Oh,
besides shipping relationships tags. We just picked Petra, and they're in
see?
286 on Archive of Our Own. So that's just one main platform for fan fictions. Um, so yeah,
Oh,
that's a lot, actually.
that's a lot.
Yes.
It's it's meaningful that that character is so important to so
Yeah.
many people that they would invest their time in creating more for her to do.
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
on to if I could ask you to pass along to all those who've contributed to those stories, that I'm really really touched, really moved, and really grateful for
I mean,
resonating
you can tell
with
them
people.
yourself. They'll be hearing
Thank
this.
you.
They'll be hearing this at some point, hopefully soon. So yeah,
It means a lot because unlike theater where you have that exchange with your audience and you get that visceral sensorial reaction that hits the waves of the applause leaving
yeah, you
hands
physically
and
feel it
engulfing you,
almost.
you feel
Yeah.
you physically feel it. And so acting for film and television is such a different experience because you're working in this sort of industrial construct, and then it goes away, and then someone pieces it together, and then it shows up and you're watching it for the first time with the people you intend it to bring joy to.
Yeah.
And so you're always happy when it hits, and you're always concerned if it misses. And to feel that not only is this story and this world resonating with people, but it's bringing out their own creativity. It just it's really meaningful. It's one of the most important roles I think I've ever had the honor to portray, and hearing from the Switch community what it's meant as a to create community for them to partake in, but also for their individual journeys on the planet, about things they've taken courage to do, things they've
Yeah.
explored, things they felt seen because they have a character who relates to their personal journey that they can use as a colleague, as a collaborator in their own adventures, I think is so important. And I think
It
that
really
the
is.
diversity that was brought together in terms of all of us as different individuals
Oh yeah.
is reflected on the screen, but that camaraderie that is you see on screen is what was happening behind. So it's a
Yeah.
nice memory of a really wonderful time.
Yeah, and I've talked to several. I've talked to Diana and to Arlen, and they pretty much said the same thing. That what was happening on screen was also off screen, and I think that the audience really caught on to that through social media, through whatever we saw glimpses of you guys backstage behind the camera, that we even fell more in love with the show.
Oh,
Because it's always
thank you.
nice to know that your favorite people, your characters on TV, also get along when they're
Yeah.
not on screen. It's great. It's and I think it's built such a safe community for us to be like, this is how people treat each other, this is how we should treat each other. And that's why there's so much love and respect for anybody. Like, doesn't matter where they come from, how they identify, sexuality, like everybody's welcome in this fandom. And I think that it's one of the greatest things. I've been in a lot of fandoms myself, and it's not always the case. It's just not always, doesn't always happen like that. And so this world that we've built outside of Motherland, but because of Motherland, just keeps growing still, and it's just beautiful. And it's because of you guys, really, that we're
Well,
still here, that we're continuing to do this, and we're continuing to talk about Motherland and creating work and fan art and fan fiction from the show.
thank you, because you're now the carriers of the world. You're now the ones who are bringing the new energy to it, and I really am grateful, because part of why, from a storytelling standpoint, this world is so important to me is because I think it's so allegorical to so many of the challenges we face in the greater world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not to get too deep, but I think we were given a gift when we were told that it would be 3 seasons, because we were able to write an ending, which means that people will find it. It doesn't just go off a cliff and then why would you start? And so the fact that it concludes as basically a capsule series means that when you all, the Switch community, are amplifying it and still bringing energy to that effort, people go, oh, well, this is a complete series. I can just binge and get caught up with. And I think that the lessons that are within it serve the world. And so the fact that you all draw attention to it in this new way with this fresh energy and just creativity, it means so much to us, because the work meant a lot as we were doing it. The stories, I think, reflect what needs to be talked about in the world in terms of how we treat each other. And you guys are now the carriers of bringing people to find it and doing that service. And so just, again, thank you all so much for amplifying it in such a meaningful way.
You're so kind. Thank you.
I'm so grateful. It's been transformative to me, and I hear that it has been for others on an individual basis, and that you guys are amplifying it to the world and continuing to show it as meaningful. Is it's just, again, it makes me kind of speechless and stuttery.
Well, same here. But like, thank you so much. That means a lot to hear that coming from you. Let's move on to some fan fiction questions, though, or Motherland related questions.
I have a sip of coffee. Get ready for this.
Great. Let's get ready. Okay, so one of the first questions I have is Raelle in the first season kind of puts the blame on Petra for getting her mother killed. What do you think a reunion would look like between Willa and Petra?
Interesting. I think they'd be united for their love of and pride in their daughters. And I also think that they would see how whatever dynamics were challenges for them from their own personal contexts have been elevated and built upon by their daughters. And I think both of them, while being protective of their daughters, want their daughters to surpass them in their own life trajectories. And so I think they would be, I think there would have, there'd be a moment where they would have to sort of calibrate for how that conversation was going to happen. But I think ultimately it would resolve very positively, and both would respect the protection that the other's daughter provided to their own child.
Right.
Because Raelle was there for Abigail and Abigail was there for Raelle. And so I think the mothers would acknowledge, as soldiers, and knowing what that bond means and knowing that the mission comes first. And I think a lot of the misunderstandings that they might have had prior to the resolution of all the things would also be in a new context and framed a different way. And they would also acknowledge that they were both operating with the best information that they had at the time.
Right. Do you think that, let's say pre-Camarilla, like, would it be different than after the Camarilla? Because at that point, when the Camarilla comes back, the ancient enemy comes back, now they have a common enemy they're fighting. But before that, Willa was full-blown spree.
Yeah.
How do you think that conflict between Petra being all army and Willa being all spree, would that have had any influence on how they would meet?
If it's pre-Camarilla, I think it's very different from what I just described, but I also think that I think they would find their space to agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I think pre-Camarilla, Petra is still very much by the book, by the code, by her training.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when the Camarilla things mix in and that causes Alder to act differently from what's prescribed,
Mm-hmm.
that jostles things for Petra and allows for other opportunities. So prior to the Camarilla, I don't think there's anything that causes her suspicion or concern, other than that the actions of the spree are jeopardizing the standing of the perception of witches and undermining the good they are doing,
Right.
and threatening the lives of civilians. And she's there in the army to protect civilians, not just witches.
Right.
So I think she would take that responsibility very seriously and would not be forgiving of
Willa.
Willa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, I need another sip of coffee.
It's early where you are.
Right? It wouldn't be as forgiving of Willa's role in it, because she would be committing criminal acts.
Right. Yeah. But again, I do agree that they would probably, for the love of their daughters and the mutual love that the daughters have for each other, that they would maybe put their differences aside just a little bit to have that conversation and to talk about what happened. I'm just trying to create fan fiction content here.
Oh yeah, no, I think there would be a truce. Like, I think it would be that sort of, like, they would come together at a neutral location, they would have a cup of coffee, they would say what needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
Willa would blame Petra would call out Willa, casualties. They would thank each other for protecting their daughters. They would say, we're going to walk away and not escalate this as it probably should, because of what we meant to each other as fighting soldiers alongside each other in the past. So this is the past moment, but should we meet again in the fray, the rules of engagement are back to what they should be.
Really different.
So I think it would be a truce, and then it would be back to.
I would have loved to seen that.
It would have been fun to do. Diana's so lovely, like
wonderful.
She's such a wonderful human being, and so to get to play with her more would have been fun.
Would have been, yeah, absolutely. I would have loved to have seen it. Speaking of in the past, we're trying to envision Petra before she joins the army. So was she
when she was gathering her husbands?
When she was gathering her husbands, before she conscripted, was she like, we always laugh after running joke that Tally was a fangirl of Alder before conscripting. Like, she had like posters for Alder in her like locker and stuff. Do you think Petra was like that, being raised to be like this soldier? Did she look up to Alder?
Oh, absolutely. But I also think she had that lineage pride, right? So part of her appreciation for Alder is that by Minerva having proximity to Alder, she basked in that reflected glory as well, right? Because they were one of the first families. Petra would have been a fan of the fact that her family was close to Alder.
So more of this statue she had, and then being close to that, than Alder per se herself.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas I think you're right. Tally was like just all Alder all the time.
I want to be her. Yeah, exactly. Again, going back on Alder, her views obviously change on Alder as Petra is climbing the ladder in the army and gets way up there. She's seeing things that maybe she doesn't like so much, or in the way Alder is handling things. That office scene between Alder and Petra, first of all, mind-blowing. Just Petra's face in that whole thing, and then only like one sentence, but it was amazing. I loved it so much. I think it shows a lot about growth for Petra also, in a way, because I'm not gonna lie, the first season I wasn't vibing with Petra very much.
Nobody was.
Who is this?
I was just like, she's got a job to do and she's trying to take care of her kid. Like everybody came for Petra season
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Same. I mean, now
Till episode 5. Till episode 5. Because
yes.
when she threw some elbows, there was a little Petra love started then. But prior to that, we were not having it.
Yeah. So do you think that besides, Petra looking up to Alder mainly for her image, you think what's their history like from serving with each other or serving under Alder? Like, do you think they've ever been friendly with each other? Because that scene seemed so loaded and so heavy with, first of all, Alder being so vulnerable to share all of that with Petra was very out of character for Alder. I mean, I know emotions were running high, but like, what are your views on that? Like,
okay, so again, because I would have been raised in the army, because Petra would have been raised in the army.
You were raised.
Forget myself here. Because Petra would have been raised in the army, watching Minerva interacting with Alder. I think there would have been a respect for how things are done, and she would have been very studious to be able to fulfill her mother's shoes in taking on responsibilities for Alder. So I think Petra would have been very rigorous about doing a good job, understanding all the rules and regulations. And I think that's why she is elevated to where we meet her in season 1 as Petra's as Alder's head of intelligence. So I mean, that to me speaks to Alder relying on her judgment, her assessments, her intelligence, her skill, her management of others. Like, there's a lot that just where Alder placed Petra indicates about what the relationship would be. I think we start to see the fact that that's an uneasy alliance, however, because I think if you crawl in the first, we laughed about it, that Alder would keep calling Petra into her office, offer her a drink, and then take her drink away, or send her away before they could have the, like, it was always like, come closer now, go away. So there was always
leave me alone.
Pull. Yeah, couldn't get her feet under her in terms of what to do next or what was going on. So I think we always hurt the ones we love. I think as things start to unravel in Alder's understanding, Petra is the one who's closest, so she bears the brunt of whatever's going on for Alder. She tries to sort through things. So yes, I think they had a close relationship. I think they were trusted advisors to each other. I think they meant, the respect of each other was important to them, which is also why I think it's so almost a betrayal when Alder starts to come off the rails from how things are supposed to be done, because everything that Petra's done has been to fulfill the standards set by Alder. And then when Alder's not even doing that, it's like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what am I doing? Yeah. So I think that would have been part of what would be going on for Petra.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I never really looked at it like that, but it makes a lot of sense. Do you think Petra had fun, though? Did she have fun? Did she let loose sometimes? I mean, she had 3 husbands, but like, did she let loose sometimes?
I think you answered your own question.
That's another full-time job, though. 3 husbands.
That's just management and scheduling. But I mean, I think Petra has a wit and an enjoyment of life and an enjoyment of the world, and I think that's part of her investment in protecting it. I think it is easier to commit yourself to protecting and safeguarding something that is meaningful to you as well. And so I think that she had her daughter, and is so devoted to her daughter in her own evolving way, because the way she shows devotion in season 1 is very different from where we find them in season 3. So which again is a thing I'm really grateful to the writers for, is that they allowed her to evolve when she got new information. They didn't keep her stuck in a paradigm that didn't growing as an individual. So again, just such a gift that the writers allowed Petra to build on the new knowledge and bring her experience forward, not just in the military context, but as a mom and as a person.
As a mom, yeah. I think that was the biggest growth we've seen, is Petra as a mother. The relationship between Abigail and Petra also changes a lot from the first season to the last season. There was some beautiful moments on screen. The reunion, but all the reunions, the one where Abigail and Rael come back after they'd been presumed dead, the one in the mirror when they're stuck in the session and they reach out to Petra. It's just beautiful scenes. Do you
Thank
think
you.
there's, I mean, speaking of children, do you think there's a reason why Petra didn't have more children with the lineage being so important? Do you think that like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was probably, as I understand it, and as I sort of made sense of it for myself in playing her, what I was able to sort of piece together and the clues about sort of what was happening was that the spree situation was fairly recent and
Mm-hmm.
fairly, and it would have started to take place after Rael was born, and Rael
Okay.
and
Okay.
Abigail are about the same
Same
age,
age.
right? So that would have been when work would have had more demands on Petra's time.
Yeah.
And she would have been engaged in dealing with this growing threat that the spree were
Yes.
becoming. And so I think that would have been the choice. Like, do I stay in this fight because they are escalating and becoming more of a threat and more dangerous and commit to my life of service in the military?
Yeah.
Or do I take time for me and go have a couple kids? And I think
Right.
even though the fathers raised them, I think there is still the biological, like, how am I an effective soldier if
Mm-hmm. If I'm
pregnant and
carrying
postpartum?
kids.
Yeah, carrying a
Yeah.
child. So I think that is my sort of how I made sense of it. I never had this conversation with Elliot about it, but this is why the sort of the timeline for me in tracking
Yeah.
is where I had that go.
Yeah, I've discussed it with some of my friends, and we basically said the same thing. It's probably too busy, too busy being in the army and working in the army to have more children.
Yeah, and I think that
But
the spree
in a
doesn't.
way,
Yeah, sorry.
no, go
Go ahead.
ahead. That for the lineage being so important and continuing the line being so important, how do you weigh those options? That's kind of like,
I think it's like any military operation, though. You go into it thinking we're going to go in, fix it, and we'll get back to our lives.
and then
You don't
six
go
years
into it
later.
thinking it's going to be exactly right. So I think she thought, okay, let me just give it my full attention, and we'll just get it sorted and dealt with as we had with other things, because
Mm-hmm.
she's been a soldier for a while at that point
Yeah, yeah,
already, and she's seen her mom, and her mom had her and her sisters. So I think there would have been every expectation, and we also don't know. I mean, real talk, women's bodies, stress
oh
affects
yeah.
your ability to conceive.
Well,
So,
yeah,
that might have been, it might have been a combination of things. And, she may have been trying to continue her life on while doing the work, but the work interfering with her literal ability to have more. Like, I think there's a
yeah,
whole bunch of ways, but I think the jumping off point for why it didn't happen was because of the growing threat of the spree. And so whether
right.
it was time or whether it was stress or whether it was whatever, I think that just was keeping her focus.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think Abigail was a handful. So,
Handful.
she might have been revising,
The
really.
attitude on that child. Poor Petra. I'm just saying, wonderful, but
Just
my
saying.
God. Um,
That may have been a one and done scenario.
she's like not doing this again. Yeah. So you brought up Minerva, and I think that relationship is also something that people would have loved to see more from the relationship Minerva and Petra, but also Minerva and Abigail. Because I think that the scene where Minerva's pretty much telling Abigail, like, you do what you feel is right, and like you do you, and like don't worry about anything else. Was that a slap to Petra's face?
Well, it was definitely news, because it's like, you've never said anything like this to me before.
Right.
Who are you? Like,
Right.
but I think that is so indicative of real intergenerational shifts, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's so relatable as a scene, because so many people have been one of those three people, where, being the one in the middle going, what, or been the grandparent watching the shock reflect on their child face as they talk to their grandparent that way, or being the grandchild watching their parent being shook by the
Right. Like,
off
what is happening?
what is happening right now.
Yeah.
So I think it was such an authentic dynamic. And I also think that also shows Minerva's growth, right? Like, the hard line she probably kept for Petra
Mm-hmm.
as a way of having her given every opportunity to live her best life. She may
Right.
have revised as her years go on, and she's like, what is life really? Okay, you know what? I gotta
Right.
like share what I've learned through my evolution
Yeah.
with this kid so she doesn't waste time like I did. So
Exactly.
I think there's again that element of evolution that all these characters get to show their growth in the conversations they have with those they care about.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love that because it was very familiar in a way because you're right. You do have those moments where you realize like something's off between your parent and your grandparent. You're like something, and then like most of the time, years later, you'll hear like, well, that's what that was about. Like that's so familiar and so realistic. And I think it was one of my favorite scenes because you could see Petra like almost like
Wait, what?
like she always had such a facade, like such a Petra Bellwether, and that like it broke a little bit there. I feel like it was like what are you saying right now? It doesn't make any sense. It was great. It was fantastic. I love it.
Thank you.
Going back on the three husbands because I just think that is fascinating. Was that an arranged marriage? Was it out of love? Like how does that work in your world? You're in the world of fan fiction.
So I think that it would be. I think that those introductions would have been arranged for Petra by the Imperatrix. And so I think there would have been an array of appropriate suitors presented for Petra. I think Petra knows her own mind, and Petra doesn't suffer fools. So Petra would have picked people based on their personal qualities, but I think she picked from a limited pool. I think she knew she understood the assignment, and so I think she would have set her filters to make it as enjoyable as possible for herself. I mean, and people that she had a connection to and shared values with and whatever. But I don't think it was based on sort of building that into the person based on a love match. I think she was given a pool of those who were appropriate, and she made her selections.
And she grown to love them because I didn't get the impression during that whole dinner scene that she didn't like her husbands. Like I think there was genuine love there.
I do, but I think it's in a context and in a respectful way to all of the people within that relationship dynamic. So I think she would be very mindful of showing appreciation and affection, but not showing favoritism, not showing, and working as a team and uniting all four in that relationship around, their shared focus of Abigail.
Yeah. Which must be lovely to have so many parents growing up. Like, there's always someone available.
Well, I don't think four parents is unusual. I think four parents in the same household is like, when you think about divorce dynamic, it's two over there and two over there.
Yeah, I meant in the same household.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for our questions. I want to thank you so much.
That went by very quickly.
Oh,
and now that we are recording, I just need it to be said again, Britt, just thank you so much for your work, and Andrea for helping with all the tech side of this and putting together such a meaningful space for these stories to get shared. You're both really amazing at what you do, and we are so grateful to have you amplifying this story for a world that needs them and inspiring new writers to take these characters further. So thank you to both of you and the community you're building.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please come back soon.
I look forward to it. Want to
we'll
check
talk
out
Biz Books when you come back.
Sounds great.
Because it's amazing. I love it so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good happy holidays. And be
happy
well.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Yes.
Hey, one more thing before you go.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was in y'all's live not too long ago, and I offered to send you a cheese package from the Netherlands.
That was you?
That was me.
Oh my gosh, I was like, dear angels of Christmas, who's the cheese?
The angels have answered.
I'm just saying, if you're interested, I will send you a care package of cheese.